Gitanjali, we're going to revisit the whole idea of how data, and insights from platforms like ours can really go a long way in the future ahead. That's a very interesting part that you brought up. When I coming to you, mobility is one place where there is a lot of collective responsibility that is expected because you're having various people using the same resource multiple times over the day, right? It could be a bike, it could even be a cab being shuffled around. The responsibility is collective, and to that extent I think you would have a tremendous challenge of building communities that are looking out for each other, right, in terms of customers doing the right thing, ensuring that they probably leave the vehicles clean for the next user, right, and also take adequate precaution for themselves. What's the confidence building effort been like? How do you see it changing, or even how do you see it strengthening over the coming weeks and months?
Sure. So I'll tell you in terms of, I'll break it into two. So one is in terms of what's happening currently and what we envisage that could, continue to happen. So in terms of, if you look at our service, we are essentially almost like a contact-free human interaction less, kind of a service where you discover the bike on the app, you unlock the bike or, access the bike also through Bluetooth. So you're really not, exchanging keys or handing over anything, etc. And now we've just, like I mentioned, we've just kind of tweaked a bit where we've removed the helmet out of the equation. Are expected to bring their own. And like I told, in many cases, most of the consumers are bringing their own pair of gloves as well. So this really kind of mitigates, too much of interaction with people on the service. Having said that, what we also did was, we kind of, during the whole lockdown period, we kind of did a research and we identified a particular solution with which we've sanitized all our bikes. This is proven to have had a very, very strong efficacy and longevity with respect to keeping this contamination free from droplet based virus. So this is proven, and this is a patented technology out of UK, which was used in the post-SARS era, and we've kind of about sanitizing all our fleets with it. So this is, in terms of what we have done as a limited thing, but this is proven to be still a lot stronger and most safe, safest, one of the safest modes, because you're not in a crowded kind of an environment. You're, literally the only person going to the bike, getting on the bike. You're not in a closed, environment. You are in your own helmet and stuff like that. So we believe that this is still one of the safest options out there. Secondly, even that there's some of the people would still wonder whether, considering the vehicle is being shared by more than one users, is it still safe enough or not? So we launched a particular product which we call as a long-term rentals, where people can, pick up a bike, which is, for as short as 7 days and can extend all the way up to a year, where you could, just get a subscription-based kind of a thing for the bike. So we give you the bike where you have the bike at your disposal, keep it at the comfort of your house, it's a key-based bike where you can kind of completely control the asset with yourself, and because not everyone has ownership to a bike. But so even if this were to continue for a slightly longer period where people may not completely want to come back to the old mode of commute, let's say a metro or a bus or any of those kind of things, we believe we've got a solution for both those things, either for a short duration-based rental, or if someone wants to kind of have complete control over the asset, we have got a product around that as well.
And that's brilliant. It's situations like these that really bring out, innovations at a very different level, right? Things might have been that might have been on our roadmap for a long, long time, right? And have been fast tracked to really solve for the solution. Long-term rentals are very, very interesting, and that also, reminds me of the fact that our own self-drive business, which we have, has obviously seen a massive uptake, right? Given people would like control over the mobility assets that they are using. What this also means, is for the industry to be able to come together. So, for instance, we have set up a network of about 500 fumigation centers across the country to ensure that every vehicle gets sanitized, fumigated every 48 hours, right? And these kind of assets and resources, could actually be shared by the larger ecosystem in some level. And that's precisely what I'm coming to very shortly. But before we get there, what has been the landscape like as we've interacted with while the governments have been doing their very best to control the contagion in every sense. We have been working. Each of these organizations here have been very closely working with the governments. Have there been broad regulatory barriers? In terms of operations, in terms of entry, in terms of exit, whatever they be. Have there been any barriers that each of your businesses have seen? But more importantly, are there unlocks and asks that you think can create a significant value in this post-COVID world that can be fast-tracked? One thought that I have is around, say, creating a sandbox environment for some things that have always been a bone of content. Bike taxis, for instance, right, have always been a question in terms of legality, in terms of operationability, etc. Maybe these are times when newer solutions can be sandboxed. Are there thoughts that each of you would have? Gitanjali, would you like to go first?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, one of the areas we saw such quick movement was medicines, right? There's been so much of a discourse around it, but within possibly like a week of the lock-in coming in, you amended your Drugs and Cosmetics Act, saying that merchants can actually do home delivery of prescription drugs, and that happened so quickly, right? And something that was possibly waiting for so long to come around. So yes, as taxi, it's been one of those areas where the uncertainty, the lack of clarity, and thus the lack of level playing field has been something that's been almost crippling for industry, right? So this is absolutely a good opportunity to think about these things and think about it differently, because I feel like that's the big thing COVID experience has taught us. The spectacle or the lens through which you actually look at policy making now should be people first. And so if you do that, right, then how you actually think about bike taxi or ride share or shared mobility will actually start changing, because you're looking at how to move people first and in the safest, most efficient and economic way. I definitely think that even on alcohol, Ganesh did mention that, yes, there are some state governments that have taken the initiative. But it's been so diverse, right? And when you can actually take the initiative and move in the medicine field to say we will allow for delivery of schedule H drugs, prescription drugs, what's stopping holding alcohol, right? But you'll see a lot of hesitation, uncertainty, all of that. So some amount of clarity. This is a great opportunity for all of us to think about it, collaborate as an industry and the government, to see what are those aspects which can really change the way people live now. And I mean, this could be like so many things we could add to, but yeah, these are largely my initial thoughts on that.
Brilliant. Ganesh, what's been Swiggy's experience with alcohol delivery? What seems to tick, what seems to work? What are the unlocks that many other state governments can create here? Would you have a view there?
Well, I'll come to that. I just wanted to talk about a few other things. One
Certainly.
is I understand that the pandemic has actually created such a fear, in terms of its management, in terms of how people are going to be affected, and then, of course, the healthcare, the strain on the healthcare system, which is now showing, and the lack of vaccine also is compounding, and the fear among the people. But people have to live. The life has to go on. There are services needed but for a life to actually sustain or move forward. You need certain things. That's where our industry, the e-commerce or the online industry has really enabled this. Just imagine in such a situation, India did not have an e-commerce environment or an online industry. What would have happened? I'm sure, whatever things that we are able to order in the initial period, the 3-month lockdown would not have happened, and it would have created so much more chaos and so much more confusion. And then you could have just imagined. Of course, the logistics chain is still not completely mended. It was broken, and it's now slowly on the mend. But the micro elements within an environment, like in a city, some areas being contained for obvious reasons, have put a lot of strain on the service accessibility for the citizens. I think if the SOPs have been defined, and if people are following the SOPs by now, we are all used to it. So there should be, at least for the service uh, availability or the access to service from commerce entities, should be enabled. This is my thinking. Coming to alcohol, Supreme Court did say in the initial stages, when the lockdown was lifted, and then there was a huge clamor for alcohol from the citizens, and then you saw these very worrisome pictures of huge lines of people standing outside liquor vents or retail outlets to access them. That made them say that government should consider home delivery of alcohol. And then it was a recommendatory in nature, because alcohol is a state subject. And like I said, West Bengal, Odisha, Jharkhand have taken the leap, and then it's going very well. I think day by day it's growing, and people are accessing, as people get to the trust is built, and then when they see the delivery is seamless, and then the ordering is seamless, and then the experience is very good. The customer experience, which is the most critical thing in the access of our services, when as it starts building, we are seeing more and more traction. But there are many other critical states, or the big consumer states, which are yet to take the plunge. They're still mulling it. I think there are a lot of other forces that actually are not enabling this at this point of time. I'm sure they'll come around. There are various other reasons which I think many people, many of us understand. So it's like a work in progress. Whatever, wherever
Right.
it's been opened, the experience has been fantastic. The customers are. It's just increasing on a day-by-day basis, the order volumes. But where it can be opened, it's still a work in progress. That much I can say.
Got it. Vinay,
We are
what
working with
are the? Sorry, go ahead.
we are still working with many governments in our advocacy to enable the opening of this sector. Sorry, you were
Absolutely,
saying
more
something.
power to you. Yeah. No, I was just asking. Vinay, what are the barriers, if any, that you guys
Sure.
faced? But more than that, what are the unlocks that you think can be
Sure.
very
Yeah.
helpful for the micro mobility sector specifically?
Absolutely. I'd like to borrow from what Gitanjali just mentioned a while earlier. I think for whatever all said and done, the pause, whatever all of us mankind kind of took, I think should give us a time to reflect upon if things could be changed and stuff like that. So I think it's also important for the government to probably see that, like she mentioned, in a different lens in terms of how shared economy per se can work, right? Be it micro mobility or any of the other things, be it bike taxi, Dunzo, Swiggy, all of us, right? So I think whatever the laws that we have, probably when the laws were being formulated, none of these were even imagined. With all of these now coming up, I think there's really a requirement for the lawmakers to revisit all of these and enable some of the laws to be accommodate all of these new changes that are there. Having said that, also like she mentioned, one of the examples of how quickly they were able to adapt to the pharma policy where delivery of pharma kind of happened. I think that's a classic case where even from micro mobility or mobility, shared mobility, etc. Right, it's very important that we have some kind of a unified agency or all agencies to come together to kind of do it. Because be it pharma or any of those, right, not one single authority could have kind of taken a call on it. Since
True.
multiple forces could join hands, I think this was being able to do overnight. And I think for long now, a city like Bangalore, we've been asking for something like a UMTA to be put in place, so that micro mobility or shared economy per se, especially with respect to mobility, be it the bike taxi, app-based cabs, or self-ride two-wheelers, etc. All of these are looked at by one authority, where they can kind of bring together BMRCL, BMTC, BESCOM. Especially because electric vehicles is something that I think we've been pushing very hard on, especially with the focus on environment and overall safety of people. I think EV is probably the future of tomorrow. So all of that keeping in mind, we are also hoping that some agency like a UMTA is fast
Right.
implemented, So that, because see, for us, like a shared mobility, one of the asks that we would also ask is, things like giving a dedicated parking place in, let's say, a metro station, or in some of the CBD areas where you can probably even have higher tolls for private vehicles to come in and things like that, where the entire city and how the city infrastructure is developed and envisaged for, let's say, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, has to be looked at by one authority and planned for future. Because I think building n number of flyovers or any of those are not going to be the solution. I think we got to move more and more people, but in a more efficient and smarter way. So that's one. On a very, very small and objective ask, I think where we believe this is probably more of an omission than a well-devised plan, is GST for a self-ride vehicle is at 28%. We still are, if two people were to share our service, we are more affordable than probably even the BMTC bus in Bangalore, AC Volvo bus. But having said that, we still attract, 28% of GST, as opposed to, a BMTC or a BMRCL, which is at zero rate, or even Ola, Uber, which are at only 5%. So if these rates were to be revisited by the authority or the state, and this was to be pushed, I think we will be able to pass on a lot of this benefit back to the consumers, and we'll become even more affordable. So this is a very objective and small ask. But for me, when we are looking at the policymakers, I think it's important for us to look at it at a very macro view. And I think an UMTA kind of authority coming into force is probably one of the biggest asks.
Got it. Very, very, very valid points. And I
Anand,
think
can I just
globally,
a couple of points?
please, Ganesh.
Yeah.
Please, Ganesh. Certainly.
One thing that Gitanjali mentioned about bike tax, we saw that there is an attempt from the West Bengal government to have some regulation around it, which is a bit worrying, because anybody who's delivering a service uses a taxi for a commercial activity, like he's a delivery partner or whatever. If you are going to have a separate kind of a regulation for him to register a fee, in a gig economy, that's a big what do you call that, detrimental, it'll have a detrimental effect on that. So while having some understanding as to, because these people don't, for life, it's not an activity for life. They may work for a year, 2 years,
Right.
3 years, whatever. So monetize during that period, their free time. There are a lot of students who go and act as delivery partners in their part time, to earn some money to sustain themselves. So those kind of laws have to be very what do you call that? You will have to have a lot of sensitivity when you frame them. It cannot be just extracting the commercial whatever the fee out of it, and then make it as a monetizing activity. While if it is sensitive and then they look at it in a holistic way, then it'll enable the system. If you're going to have stringent laws, and then it will be detrimental for that activity. The second thing is,
Right.
during the lockdown, we also observed, in many places, the local administration, since the local administration was given a lot of powers, their lack of understanding of e-commerce activity was quite palpable, because they were trying to restrict these delivery fees or the service fee charged, because these are the two fees which actually sustain e-commerce business. So if you are going to regulate that, because it's also a function of the distance to which an order is catered, there is a cost to it,
Right.
both the vehicle cost as well as the fuel cost, and then the cost of time of the delivery partner. So you cannot say deliver it at zero fee, or deliver it at a this thing where a certain minimal fee, because that doesn't work. Even if I want to go to a place, like I live in Malleshwaram, I want to go to about 3 kilometers away to buy something and come. There's a cost to it. There's a cost of fuel. There's a cost of
Absolutely.
time. There's a cost of the vehicles, wear and tear. So those have to be kept in mind, and certain restrictions, like you cannot charge a service fee for the activity you do. So while a retailer who's selling a grocery, he's allowed to charge certain profit or whatever percentage. But for a person who's taking it from him to the customer, you're not allowing for the service fee. Then the activity does not make any commercial sense for any e-commerce player, because
Right.
they are the revenue models on which a lot of the e-commerce companies work, since we are not allowed to hold inventory, like you were saying.
Right. Fair point. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was saying, the revival is a great opportunity for all businesses to look at doing the right things in the long term, right? And Vinay, you spoke about electric, and I think the electric agenda, for example, was one of the most significant agendas before we slipped into the lockdown and the time thereafter, right? But it is important that we continue to keep these agendas at high priority, right? And this could be true of various others which have not been unlocked, right? Uh, 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 thank God for the fact that medicine deliveries were unlocked during this time, because it was a very very critical element to the way citizens were able to observe social distancing, follow the lockdown, etc. But these times are definitively the times where we need to look at long-term agendas to hold on to and ensure that we're doing it right grounds up. One of which, like you said, is definitely electric. I'd like to stay with this point before we move to closing remarks, which is this has also impacted a lot of people, right? And for at least for the three of us on this panel, people are essentially very very central to our businesses running, right? In some sense, that also holds true for Bounce, given the number of people who may be in cities, who are users, young users who may have probably gone back to their hometowns, etc. There has been significant impact on lives and livelihoods, right? The average delivery partner, the average driver partner, is looking at a lower income level as compared to what the world was before the lockdown. A lot of them have gone back to their hometowns, right? There is a supply constraint, right? Very certainly. How are these issues being navigated by your businesses? A. B. More importantly, what are the focused people initiatives that we are taking as gig economy businesses to be able to ensure, right, that they're able to get past the stage and are empowered to get past the stage with the support of platforms like ours? I'll probably lay out a couple of interesting aspects. Even through the end of the lockdown, we unlocked what we called microcredit to driver partners across the platform, right? And this was something that really helped them see their basic liquidity solved for. More importantly, what we also did through the period was create a range of initiatives, including say waiver of lease rentals, etc., which could help them a go through this phase as things revive, but more importantly give them more financial certainty in a sense, right? In the cities where we are already functioning, which is a significant number of them now, we have invested a lot in ensuring that consumer confidence is at its highest, right? And we're doing this also by investing in the driver partner, and that could, like you, Ganesh mentioned, could be ensuring that they have protective equipment, masks, sanitizers, disinfectants, etc., or even insurance, right, to ensure that they don't risk driving, right, when they are symptomatic in any sense, right, and they're not forced to go out there and work, right? So we've created a COVID insurance for driver partners and their spouses, right, that runs through the year, right, and protects their income loss if at all they turn positive, or they have to quarantine themselves, right? What are the people initiatives particularly that your businesses, your organizations are rolling forward? And in that context, are there things that governments, local governments can help us do better? Are there things that the policy can structure better for people in this economy? Gitanjali, do you want to go first?
Sure. So, when you say people, again, for us, there are multiple stakeholders. There are
Right.
Our own Dunzo folks, there are partners, there are merchants, and there are users, right? So the first thing that we needed to do was ensure that we remained on ground in this period again, like I said earlier. So yes, we've done the insurance and, the MILAP contributions, all of that kept happening. But it was very important for partners and merchants to know that they could continue to earn their livelihood, because this time is not just about, the regulation. There was a lot of uncertainty, which also leads to a lot of questioning within, right? It was so important to give them that confidence that they could continue to be earning members. So, we had to quickly change our policies with respect to partners, merchants, made sure that we could do early payouts instead of even like weekly payouts, so that there was, enough cash flow to make sure that there was working capital to sustain through this period. We started a few features like, saluting the delivery partners. And there was so much positivity that came out with that, because users were so overwhelmed. They would reach out to the partners, have wonderful messages sent out to them. And that leads to a very positive impact at the human level. And, that makes sure that the entire process was so much more humane in that time. There were tipping features that came out, the kudos features came out, early payouts. So these were the other things as initiatives we did. At the Dunzo level itself, mental health and well-being was something that was very important for us, to make sure for the team, because suddenly you move like 1,000 people to remote working, people who are used to working together at, in office spaces. Not only give them the infrastructure, but also the mental, well-being and welfare, to make sure that they were able to contribute as well as to just be healthy through this time. So on the people front, there were multiple angles that, we sort of had to work through and come up with quickly, so that it was actually effective at that point in time.
Got it.
Yeah.
Ganesh, would you like to add to that? What are the things that
Sure.
you're looking to do ahead? Yeah.
Yeah. What we did, I'd like to say what are the initiatives we've already taken. We've taken, like Gitanjali was saying, at multiple level, at the employee level, at the delivery partner level, at the restaurant level, with our restaurant partner level. So at the employee level, of course, there was a lot of educational SOPs that were sent out in terms of their personal safety and what they need to do. And then,
Yeah.
dedicated IT team to work with them to see that, there's seamless work from home element. And then insurance, which had the COVID element added to it. And then, there was dedicated helplines where they could reach out in terms of if any of the office, the Swiggy staff had got what infected, and for them and their family in terms of whom to reach to, where to speak to. And then there were a lot of support offered for the delivery partners. Since the business was in a period of a much lower volume than we are used to, so we had minimum guarantee of their wage that was enabled. So we pulled in the whole employee, and then through various other means we pulled in a kind of a fund where they were being given the minimum wage guarantee. And then we had an insurance for COVID for them, covered for the delivery partner and this family. We reach out through their ops teams in terms of when they get infected, as to where they should need to go, which hospital, how testing will be done, the quarantine support, etc. For the restaurant partners also, we created a kind of a mechanism of fund where we would also be supporting them in terms of, because there are a lot of livelihoods also impact. So this continues. And then of course the COVID insurance has been added right from the beginning when it started, because that was a novel thing, and the minimum guarantee. And that actually helped us when the business started picking up, the delivery partners, when they came back to work, etc. So there was the opportunity available for them to be part of the whole activity.
Got it. We at Ola did something interesting during this time. We unlocked our entire technology platform and made it available to the governments, right? And said you could use this for social distancing. You could use this to, dispatch healthcare workers on a need basis. So actually, the entire backend mobility platform was something that we unlocked for various use cases, right? And that brings me to a very interesting question, and to start with you on that. We're all internet companies. We're all heavy on technology. Millions and in fact billions of data points that we sit on every single day, every single week, do on stuff that they order, on places that they go to, right? while basic things like contact tracing, etc., have been simpler and easier for the internet-enabled businesses to support in terms of government initiatives. What are the key innovations that you think can come from our technology strengths and capabilities that we can support the government with? Can be used to the advantage of people, right? And actually helping the entire city and its citizens kind of move forward through the kind of back end data that we have, to the kind of insight that we have on people and their behavior.
Asking me, Anand?
Sure, Anand. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get probably Vinay to go, and then we'll come to you, Ganesh, right away.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Anand, I think this point, right, I would probably think is extremely relevant with or without your, if COVID had happened or not, right? I think, like you rightly mentioned, in this era of, data and technology, where data sharing, if it can be used to the benefit of not just we as a corporate or a service provider, but for the citizens or the community at large, then I think it's something we should all push for. And we've been doing this, at least with, especially with, let's say tomorrow, if a Dunzo or a Swiggy were to start with a bike taxi, or if we were to start a bike taxi, or with, our competitors and, fellow service providers like Wogo and Drivesy, etc. We've always been pushing for this, where we should start a formal platform for sharing of data, especially on, bad consumer behavior, wherever if we have people who've been repeatedly, kind of committing offenses, traffic offense or any such things, or let's say a bad behavior with respect to irresponsibly parking a vehicle or any such things, we've been pushing for where we can start sharing data, not just amongst us as a service provider. We've even taken it up formally with the police commissioner. He's been extremely forthcoming and, welcoming this idea. Where, if all of us were to kind of weed out the bad elements out of this, right, and make it so difficult for them to access any of these services, I think it will be such a big deterrent for them to, go on continuing this kind of a behavior elsewhere. Imagine if a bad driver or a rider were to be shared as a data point with a Wogo or a Dunzo, and they were to, temporarily suspend a license number, because all of us, for us, one of the unique IDs based on which we kind of profile our consumers is the driving license. So it's very easy for us to pinpoint a particular person. It's not like his mobile number or name or any such thing. So we can clearly identify that based on this particular DL number, if I were to be able to, take a position, we have banned a lot of our consumers over the last, few months, where we've seen that repeatedly they've committed a traffic offense or any such thing. And if tomorrow we were to be able to share it with, let's say, Dunzo plus Wogo, and if we as a service provider, all of us take a call that for the next 3 months, this particular person is not going to be let on our platforms, I think eventually this can be a very, very powerful tool where the city like Bangalore or any of the communities, right, we will then be able to kind of shape the behavior of people pretty fast. And this is just one of the data points that I can think of, but I think we can kind of extend this thought and work closely where, it doesn't really hamper or hurt any of our personal, in terms of the way we run our businesses or the data privacy with respect to what we have kind of supposed to be adhering to our consumers. In spite of it, if we are able to, share data in a very intelligent manner, I think we can do a lot of positive, change towards the community.
Sure. Ganesh, this could mean, off the cuff, if I can think of it, this could mean ensuring that there's sufficient social distancing in popular restaurants. This could also mean, helping restaurants manage, their demand in a sense to ensure that instances are minimized of contagion. What's Swiggy thinking of, all these opportunities to put the best of its technology forward, to ensure that the most is made of what we have in moving the city forward?
Yeah, one thing that comes to my mind is we are working with NIC, who's actually the one who created the Arogya Setu. So we have certain queries where every delivery partner has an Arogya Setu on his app, on his phone, and then every employee has, so that how we can actually open source it to understand the other facets of it, because now it's only a pull kind of information. Now how you can also make it slightly more interactive. I just got a message yesterday from NIC saying that it'll be allowed in a very short period of time. So that gives that much little bit more or a flexibility in that, in terms of for his own safety, the person who's accessing the data, and for the government also to understand if, is there any contact that's happened, and in terms of social distancing. Of course, every restaurant, I think, very diligently is now following social distancing, and
Yeah.
I have seen, personally experienced in many restaurants, where the delivery pickups are actually segregated from the in-house dining, so that people don't come in contact, and then there are these token systems and all that happen. And
Right.
one good thing that's happened is, it's a kind of reflection on the way the social system is. We were not so conscious about social distancing as a society. Now people do very consciously maintain social distance because the fear factor was too much. So I think the society as a whole is adapting, and I mean, this is good for the long term, that where we also respect other people's space and our own space. That's, I think, one good thing that's come out of this whole
Absolutely.
unprecedented situation, I would call that.
Superb. Geetanjali, any thoughts on how you guys can leverage technology, all the insights that you have to make the most, both for your partners, for your merchants, as well as the city at large?
Right. So, like I said, initially we've already put in place that technology to avoid, excess crowding at stores, to avoid, excess buying in. But I think one of the things that we would also be able to do is empower the local merchants, right? Because you have large enterprises, or you have the chain merchants who have enough of data to know which areas, what products move. They're able to manage their supply chain, much better and more efficiently. We would be able to partner with local merchants to be able to do that in a more effective manner. These are the people who really need the support and the continued working capital to sustain and to be,
Right.
the actual support in society. So that's one example of what, people like us would be able to contribute while we move our cities forward, but getting cities to people as well at the same time.
Brilliant, brilliant. The most unexpected of applications of our technology platform was amongst farmers, right? And Ola Connects was deployed in the state of Punjab to support 1.5 million farmers, so that they can come to mandis and maintain social distancing, and they can avoid overcrowding. Right. So the possibilities for the kind of technology companies that we are, the internet companies that we are endless. And wonderful to have your thoughts on responsibility amidst the revival. And thank you so much for all your comments. Professor Gowda, with your permission, if you have any questions and if you would like to make any closing remarks, it'd be wonderful to have them. I think this has been a very, very enriching discussion so far. Both from understanding what these platforms, what all of us have done, as well as knowing what we can do together with the city, with the governments, and with ourselves as the industry itself.
Um, Nothing really to add other than to say this has been an extraordinarily enriching conversation, and I've learned so much, and we've engaged in so many different dimensions of this whole internet-enabled services. And I think there are also some very, very tangible policy directions that have emerged. And I'm actually very gratified to learn about how much you've taken care of your stakeholders, about how you've made a difference. This story about the farmers is just really, I'm a farmer too at some level. So these are all really, really very, very positive stories. And I think everyone will learn so much more. And I want to congratulate each and every one of you, Anand, for your inputs and for guiding this conversation so well. And of course, Vinay, Geetanjali, and Ganesh for adding perspectives that have really enriched our understanding of where we are, how we've recovered, we can look forward to in the future, enabling and empowering and getting Bengaluru back on the move again. Thank you so much.